it's Andy from Victory Through Sound here. Said a few weeks ago I was going to give you a bit of a deep dive into the tracks on our debut album, Chapter in the Universe, which came out last week. So here we go. So 36 Views it's quite a visually provocative track with the use of language. It's essentially around authenticity and being genuine and cutting through a lot of the bullshit and really being able to sort of celebrate yourself and celebrate relationships and get onto a deeper level once you cut through all that sort of nonsense. So it starts to talk about our flags will unfurl when our empires have burned. We'll start making sense when the butterflies end. So when you're through the sort of honeymoon period in relationships, and visually around, there was dropped in things like there's a line that says, "I'm Hokusai in the snow," which obviously Hokusai, the artist, great Japanese artist, and just something around that imagery of being alone, but sort of dropping the ego and just being the sort of genuine self, I guess. So it's a little bit loose, but something around that. There you go. What a Champion is me trying to write a Skids song. Certainly musically, it's very evocative of the Skids, who are a major influence on me, and certainly obviously Stuart Adamson as a guitarist is my sort of main influence when it comes to playing guitar, but also essentially I think it's sort of around lyrically, it's around being constantly pushed, sort of day by day, sort of social media, to be pushed to be better, to be healthier, to be stronger, to be better looking, to be fitter, and it's me at my sort of self-defeating best, really. Born a champion, sort of going out with all the vim and the vigor and the sort of best will to get on and do well and be great, and getting closer and doing it, but then getting constantly sort of kicked back, not personally, but sort of gently, I suppose. So yeah, Born a Champion, bit sort of tongue-in-cheek, but the chorus is, we're swimming. Repeat of the line, "We're swimming," is around, constantly sort of, we're all like sort of just, sort of fish sort of swimming in this sort of big sea, really, and sometimes the current is just a bit too strong sometimes. So yeah, there you go, Born a Champion. Well, Little Ricochet came from, it's actually like it's a short version, or it's like a part of the longer track, Ricochet, sort of a bit of a lead in. And although Ricochet is not featured on the album, I wanted a kind of a nod to it. So I did Little Ricochet as a sort of a new sort of short version to feature on the album. So essentially, it comes from Ricochet, which is, as it turned out, it's almost like a soundtrack for an imaginary western. I collaborated with Leicester Square, from guitarist from the Monochrome set, and found a member, Adam and the Ants. So I wrote the track with him a few years ago, and he back and forwards, and he plays on the track, and we put this together. So I obviously credit it to him as well. But yeah, just a bit of fun, really. No deep meaning to it. Just a bit of fun, just something a bit evocative of that sort of Western, sort of imagery, I guess. Yeah, so as I was talking about Valencia, so another one that is kind of similar from a point of view. It's just sort of storytelling on a specific thing and less ambiguous. Is The World Has Lost All Colour, which we did release as a single a few years back, and it is about Steve McQueen, but specifically about Steve McQueen and his feelings and him around the making of Le Mans. Niche, right? But he talked about, he was so engrossed. He's a great actor, so I'm sure he's engrossed in all of his movies. But he was very wrapped up and very engrossed in the making of that movie, and it took him over entirely. And when he said when he finished it, he felt like the world had lost all colour. And it was just quite an interesting thing to say, that he was so caught up in the making of the filming of this movie that everything afterwards just sort of was sort of drained of all colour and just sort of flat. So it's intensity around that and him as a person, a little bit of narrative around him as a person and his upbringing and what makes him. So yeah, twofold, specifically around him making that movie, which is where the idea came from, but around about Steve McQueen as well, an interesting guy. And it's quite, from a musical point of view, I guess it's another sort of pretty catchy melody. There's probably something, maybe sort of something like that Mannix might have stuck out. But yeah, big guitar track. No apologies, big guitar track. There you go. Yeah, Valencia was again it's just a bit of narrative around the story of the HMS Valencia that sunk sort of turn of the century. So it's very sort of straightforward, telling the story of that. I just found it quite evocative visually when I read about it, and especially as it was sort of going, kind of sort of sinking and there was sort of passengers that were sort of left on deck were sort of still singing the hymn until sort of the last moment, really. So it was quite I just found it really sort of quite evocative and quite an interesting sort of subject matter. I'd always been a favourite in the set. I'd always gone down really well. So yeah, quite straightforward. Just something that piqued my interest, as these sort of stories do, which I'll tell you about another one. So We Never Went to the Moon is fairly straightforward, I think, in the sense that it came from lots of conversations around sort of various conspiracy theories with a friend of mine from a few years back. Not the friend from a few years back, the conversations from a few years back. I still have the friend and we still talk about these things. So it's kind of that. So it mentions it as a whole, it's called We Never Went to the Moon, but there's a whole host of, all the main ones are in there. So it's kind of a bit of fun, and it is almost like a dialogue or like a conversation between two people if you listen to it. And it's a track that I really enjoy it. I really enjoy playing it. I've always loved playing it. I really love how it's turned out on the album, quite dark and sort of brooding. It features the female artist on it is Melissa Jo Heathcote. She's the lead singer of a band called The Trudy, which I've known for a long time, and I always knew when I came to recording the song that I wanted her to do the other vocals on it, and it was quite a loose brief, I gave her, but it just sounds exactly as I thought it would, and she did a phenomenal job on it. As I thought she would. She just sounds great on it, and it's just absolutely perfect for the song. So yeah, really pleased how it came out. But yeah, quite a straightforward song, really. Bit of fun done in a kind of a sort of cloaked in a bit of sort of shrouded in a bit of sort of mystery and darkness, I suppose. But yeah, it's an interesting track, and I say a great one that I enjoy doing live. Yeah, so Circus Girl is essentially quite similar in sort of feel to Born and Champion in a way, or certainly the essence of the song around sort of struggle and hope. And it was kind of a gift to my partner who was in the circus, hence Circus Girl. It was the first single that we actually released as a band. And this version on the album is a totally re-recorded version, which is also out as a single EP, just gone. So, but it sounds totally different. It sounds much more like I kind of wanted it to sound. And it also features James Atkin from lead singer of EMF. And he features, so he's backing vocals on this version, and there's a version on the EP as well, which he does the full vocal for, which is fantastic. But yeah, certainly in feel it's very much like a little bit like Born a Champion, yeah, it's a really sort of upbeat kind of song, always been popular, and again, just sort of shows shows how we can sort of turn sort of sometimes sort of melancholy into something quite sort of upbeat and poppy and sort of charming, I guess, within the parameters of a pop song. So yeah. At Circus Girl. So Everything Adds Up to Nothing was the last single, and came from an idea, or came from a bass line that Michael had, that we started playing around with, and then eventually sort of whipped up into this song, really. Quite a sort of quite a sparse song for us, I think, in terms of musically what's going on, yeah, it's just a bit of a play. The title is just a bit of a play on words. Sort of, it's quite sort of negative on the surface, I guess. But actually, all it is just I suppose a recognizing that it's all the little things that turn out to be the important things. So as you go through life, you sort of realise it is everything adds up to nothing. It's what you would sort of consider the nothing moments, or the insignificant moments, actually the real important stuff. Finishes with the line, "Nothing makes us everlasting." Again, nothing. The nothing moments, the small moments, are the things that sort of complete us, and that we realise other things that have made us and made our lives what they are, really, not all the other nonsense that we strive for on a daily basis. So yeah, quite straightforward. Again, written in my usual sort of melancholic tone, but quite a sort of a powerhouse in the song. Quite sparse for us, I think, musically, but yeah, sort of quite a powerhouse of a song. And essentially, yeah, that's pretty straightforward, really. Saturday Is Only Good for Fighting and Falling Apart originally came lyrically a lot from a poem that I wrote quite some time ago, Um, and again, it's another song that is quite infectious from a melody point of view, and quite upbeat, but actually it's quite a dark song, and came from a very dark place and a very dark period. And if you lyrically, if you look into it, it's quite sort of self-explanatory what's sort of going on, and quite very autobiographical. So quite a challenging and dark subject matter, and horrendous time in my life, but as it shows, something great can come of it. Another upbeat sort of kind of poppy melody, but yeah, it's really cool. And again, it's totally new version on the album, which we re-recorded, and just really chuffed with it, with the re-recorded version. Just sounds great. So really chuffed with that. But yeah, more of the same. More me being at my kind of like dire, depressive, kind of reflective self, but turning it into something chirpy and good-humoured and nice to listen to, if you will. But yeah, and the title "Saturday is Only Good for Fighting and Falling Apart" is essentially, again, encapsulates probably where I was at the time, really, because it's pretty much what I was doing at that time. But enough about that. Enjoy the song. Long Sands is essentially, I think I touched on it in a previous post, but it's just a real nostalgia trip. It's just a real, nothing specific, but sort of harking back to childhood and childhood memories, and where you grew up, and where you came from, and so there's a lot of key things that I sort of mentioned that are quite specific to where I grew up. And funny enough, when our new drummer Matt joined, he lived in the northeast for a bit, and he picked up on a lot of the references, which was cool. And also the introduction to the song is done by a friend of mine, Mariko. So in Japanese it says something like, I am part of this land, and this land is part of me, I believe. But yeah, it's just a trip down memory lane. It's just a real nostalgia trip, because I've generally always got one part of me firmly stuck in that place, and I'm quite nostalgic, which comes out through the music. But yeah, and I think I just wanted to have a sort of from a musical point of view, big twangy guitars. I think my direction to the studio was something like a cross between Apache by the Shadows and something that Lloyd Cole and the Commotions would do. From a guitar point of view, so there's lots of that sort of Strat. I use the Strat a lot on it. And captured that, so it turned out as I wanted it to. But yeah, that's the direction I get to the studio when we put it in. But yeah, really pleased with it. It's cool. So Goodnight number 5 is one of the most recent tracks I've written, and it was written quite quickly. And it was written for So in the time that we were making the album, we lost a really good friend of ours, a guy called Lou, and we did. He was a great mate in the band, and we recorded around his house in his little studio. He did our sound at a lot of the shows. He supported us because he was a phenomenal guitarist, great singer, lovely voice. But apart from that, just a lovely human being, and we lost him. Yeah, we lost him a little while back, very, very suddenly. So we made the choice to dedicate the whole album to Lou, whatever that means. Just giving it out there's a positive message that the album is entirely dedicated to him. And Goodnight Number 5 I wrote it for him and about him. I always refer to him jokingly as the fifth member of the band, which in my mind he was. And so it's pretty explanatory, the title really. But this was my sort of gift to him to sort of help him on his way and sort of a bit of a sort of raise the glass and sort of see you on the other side. So this one is entirely for Lou. The design of the stars came from the title and the chorus specifically came from or was inspired by a poem by a friend of mine, Derek Brown, fantastic American poet, and it was inspired by one of his poems called A Finger, Two Dots, Then Me, which I first heard when I first saw him many years ago, and he gave me permission to use part of that poem at the start of the record on the album. So thanks to Derek for that. We've been mates ever since. But the message really throughout the song, it's not that complicated. It's just a really sort of a message of goodwill and kind of being good to people and being a good person and making time for people and being a good citizen, and so it's quite a positive, uplifting message. It says something like keep calm and looking pretty for the great unknown. It was sort of sort of toying around with sort of just a bit of a comment on kind of people's obsession with how they look, and when it really, I understand it, but it really doesn't fucking matter because we're all going the same way. We're all going to die at the end of the day. Without being too morbid about it, but it was just about in the time, in whatever little life is, in the time that you got, just try and be, try and do some good in the world and do something for other people or make other people feel good. And that's essentially what it was about. Musically, it was just just quite a sort of a sort of rousing, driving, guitar-y song, which I guess sort of sounds quite. Got my kind of guitar-y sort of signature style all over it, I guess, or whatever that is. But that's, when I wrote it and put it together, it was one of those ones that was sort of fairly fully formed in my head. Just to mention, the original idea for it came from a riff that our drummer at the time, Al, had, and he gave us the sort of the 2-chord riff, which essentially is only around a couple of chords. So that sparked the musical idea for the song. So credit to him for that. But yeah, love playing it. It's the closer on the album. It's the big sort of end track. But ironically, I think we're opening up with it at the live shows. But yeah, popular choice.